Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Adamoose, and today in this series called In Depth, I'm going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about Bel'Veth, League's most recent jungler.
Sink beneath waters.
Bel'Veth is very unique, gaining permanent stacks that increase her power throughout the game. Although she can feel a bit weak at first, she gains strength as the game progresses, becoming harder and harder to deal with as time goes on. If you enjoy the content, it really helps me out if you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to help your boy out with the YouTube algorithm. If you want to talk with me and other members in the community, be sure to join the Discord link that's in the description. I hope you guys can learn something. Enjoy the video. Quickly before we hop into the content, I want to introduce the sponsor of today's video, League Unleashed. League Unleashed is a coaching service that helps players of any skill level quickly evolve their game to the next level and reach their goals. They have a roster of very high elo coaches to choose from, which will help you identify your mistakes, figure out where you're stuck, and greatly speed up your learning curve. They also offer a free coaching session to anyone who's serious about improving. Simply click the link in the description to go to their site, fill in your info, and schedule your first lesson. If you want to get a feel for their service, I highly recommend checking out their YouTube channel where they post educational content and coaching VODs as well. I've learned a lot about jungling from them, and I highly recommend you guys give them a go. If you do check them out and enjoy, be sure to tell them I sent you. It really helps to support my channel. Bel'Veth's passive is called Death in Lavender. Passively, Bel'Veth attacks 36% faster than regular champions, and her attack speed cap is modified to 90. All sources of damage coming from her basic attacks is reduced to 75%. This includes on-hit effects as well, which we'll discuss later on. In addition to this, Bel'Veth's ability casts each generate 2 stacks of Death in Lavender on a resource bar, which lasts 5 seconds, refreshed on basic attacks and abilities, which stacks up to 6 times. While she has stacks available, she becomes ghosted and gains bonus attack speed based on her level. Her basic attacks then consume 1 stack each. Now if that wasn't enough to understand, whenever Bel'Veth scores a takedown against a champion within 3 seconds of damaging them, she gains a permanent stack of Lavender. Large monsters generate 1 stack, while champions and epic monsters generate 2 stacks. For each stack, Bel'Veth gains scaling attack speed, making her an absolute menace when she has some time to farm up and participate in fights. Bel'Veth's Q is called Void Surge. Bel'Veth dashes in the designated direction, dealing physical damage to enemies she passes through, and applying on-hit and spell effects at 75% effectiveness to the first target hit. Void Surge can crit and deals 120% damage to monsters, which greatly aids in her clear speed. The tricky part about her Q is that it can be cast in 4 directions that each has a unique cooldown. This cooldown is reduced based on her ability haste and attack speed, making this a very powerful mobility tool when she has multiple Lavender stacks. There's an indicator that shows which direction is available to dash towards, but can also be important to keep a mental note of the order in which you already dashed to know which will come off cooldown first. This also works as an auto attack reset, which is very important to make use of in fights and while farming, since you can use this 4 times. Bel'Veth's W is called Above and Below. Bel'Veth slams her tail down in the target direction, dealing magic damage to enemies hit, knocking them up and slowing them by 50%. If Above and Below hits an enemy champion, it resets her Q's dash cooldown towards that target's direction. This is important to note, as she can Q towards her target, W for the knockup, then Q again for a massive gap closer. Bel'Veth's E is called Royal Maelstrom. Bel'Veth enters a defensive stance for 1.5 seconds, during which she is unable to move but gains lifesteal and massive damage reduction. During this time, she rapidly slashes at the nearest enemy with the lowest health percentage over the duration. Each slash deals physical damage, increased by the target's missing health, and applying on-hit, on-attack, and spell effects. This also deals 150% damage to monsters, again aiding in her jungle clear. You can recast her E after 0.75 seconds, and does so automatically after the duration or when Bel'Veth casts an ability to end this channel. The target does not have to be visible to be hit by this ability. This is a strange but very powerful ability when used correctly. This is usually used as a DPS check to face tank enemies and chop them down very quickly. You can also use it to reduce burst with a damage reduction. With that being said, keep your positioning in mind as this will root you in place and can leave you vulnerable once a duration is up. Bel'Veth's ultimate is called Endless Banquet. Passively, Bel'Veth's basic attacks apply an on-hit mark to the target for 5 seconds. Every second attack against a marked target will deal bonus true damage and generates a stack of Endless Banquet that increases this damage. This effect stacks infinitely against non-epic monsters, but will expire if Bel'Veth attacks a new target. Additionally, when Bel'Veth scores a takedown against an enemy champion or epic monster while alive, a Void Coral is spawned from their corpse for 15 seconds. Taking down Rift Herald or Baron Nashor will instead spawn an enhanced Void Coral, which has additional benefits, which we'll discuss. Now for the active, Bel'Veth dashes to the target Void Coral to consume it over the cast time, slowing enemies by 25%, ramping all the way up to 99% over the duration. She then creates an explosion at the location to deal true damage to enemies within and gains her true form for 1 minute. Bel'Veth consumes all existing Void Corals at once, generating a stack of lavender for each one consumed. Now for the fun part, Bel'Veth's true form. Bel'Veth transforms into a monster, gaining bonus health, bonus movement speed out of combat, bonus attack range, increased total attack speed, and allowing her Void Surge to dash through terrain. Consuming a Void Coral refreshes the duration of true form and will heal Bel'Veth. She can also consume Enhanced Void Coral that spawns from Rift and Baron, which causes Void Remora to spawn when minions die nearby. These Void Remora are like minions that will fight for you once you're pushing in a lane. The Enhanced Void Coral also extends your true form for 3 minutes, which is 3 times longer than usual. Although this ability is a bit complicated, think of it as a massive steroid that Bel'Veth gains once she takes down enemy champions and objectives. A nearby Void Coral is required to cast this ability, acting almost like a Viego possession as a reset in fights. Once you obtain your true form, it's the ideal time to look for fights as you become an absolute killing machine, but on a timer. For ability maxing, there are 2 setups being run by the top Bel'Veth players. First and most common is Q max into E, which gives you a lower Q cooldown for more mobility and playmaking potential. Next is E max into Q second, which is purely about dueling power with the increased lifesteal and damage reduction. Both options are solid, and as time goes on players will find the most optimal build, but if I had to say right now, Q max does seem more consistent overall. Now let's hop into Bel'Veth's best rune setups for the current season. First for Keystones, Conqueror is by far the most consistent pick, as Bel'Veth thrives in extended fights with the extra sustain and adaptive damage. In addition, she can also stack it up extremely fast with her multiple Qs, E attack speed, and overall attack speed steroid with her passive. Lethal Tempo is also a viable choice for increased range and attack speed against squishier teams, although I do think it's quite overrated compared to how good Conqueror is. To close out the precision tree, Triumph, Legend Alacrity for DPS, Legend Tenacity against lots of CC, Coup de Grace into very squishy teams, and Last Stand in most games so you can dominate team fights and sustain once you get low. Now for secondary, Inspiration is by far the most common choice among the top players. The standard picks are Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight, while Futures Market can also work to rush your item spikes more quickly. I've also been loving Resolve secondary with Conditioning and Revitalize to give you ridiculous sustain and tankiness in the mid to late game. I recommend you try both out and see what suits your playstyle best. For Rune Shards, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and either Armor or MR, depending on your jungle matchup and the enemy's team comp. Now let's discuss Bel'Veth's best item builds. For starters, Red Smite is going to be the best choice in most games for the increased dueling power, while Blue Smite can be used in rare cases against very mobile, squishy team comps. For boots, Plated Steel Caps are against heavy AD, and Merc Treads are a great choice into tons of CC. I also see some players running Berserker's Greaves for increased DPS, although I think it's pretty overkill as you'll already have a ton of attack speed regardless. Now Mythics is where Bel'Veth has quite a few options. The most common choice is Kraken Slayer, which gives you a ridiculous amount of DPS and even more true damage with your scaling attack speed. Immortal Shield Bow is the next most common, which is great if you need a more defensive setup against burst damage, which also pairs amazingly with Resolve secondary. Another solid choice is Frostfire Gauntlet, which seems very strong in the right situations to give you tankiness and extra utility. Last is Stridebreaker, which is a middle ground build that seems to be pretty strong as well. With all this being said, Kraken Slayer does seem like the best overall pick, followed by more defensive options depending on the game. Now for core items, Blade of the Ruin King is by far the most important to note, as it synergizes perfectly with her kit, adding more on-hit damage. If running the tank mythics, Blade is also a first item rush. After Blade, items such as Death's Dance, Guinsoo's, Wit's End, and Titanic Hydra are your main picks. These are all strong in their own right, giving you more damage and survivability, turning you into a 1v9 machine. After your core, Bel'Veth has tons of item diversity depending on the game. Usually you want to get as beefy as possible, even building tank items to make sure you can get into the middle of team fights without getting instantly bursted. Now let's go over Bel'Veth's jungle strategy and pathing. First, how to clear the jungle efficiently. The most important thing to speed up your farming is always using your Q as an auto attack reset, while also making use of your passive attack speed in between abilities. This takes some time to get used to, but actually has a pretty nice rhythm once you practice. Next is knowing how to properly make use of your Q, which is her only mobility tool, while also providing solid damage output. Since each direction has a unique cooldown, remembering the order in which you dashed will allow you to predict when you can dash again. This is very important, as sometimes you need to dash in a specific direction and need a plan around your cooldowns. To build on this, Bel'Veth's W resets your Q cooldown in the direction used, so you can do a quick QWQ combo to travel pretty far if your knockup lands. Now for your E, which is her easiest ability mechanics wise, but really needs to be timed correctly to get the most value out of it. It's very important to save your E for the enemy's most important damage cooldowns so you can survive, while also making sure you wait until enemies use their mobility spells and are in close proximity so they can't escape your massive DPS while you're rooted. Last is her ultimate, which can be used once you kill objectives and enemy champions. The first thing to remember is that whenever you get one of those takedowns, you must manually cast your ultimate on top of the Void Coral to transform into your true form. This can be used in teamfights to refresh your HP and deal massive AoE damage, something like a Viego possession, but with huge AoE damage. Now for jungle clears, Bel'Veth does not have a great early game, so her jungle route options are quite limited. The strongest and most consistent is definitely the full clear, which allows Bel'Veth to hit level 4 by Scuttle Spawn, while also reducing chance of getting killed before she starts to power up. This is the lowest risk route that will give you great success in most games. Next, if you see a gankable lane or vulnerable jungler, you can definitely do a 5-camp clear into gank or invade to punish overextended enemies. I don't recommend this if you don't have an easy play to make, since losing farming time is very detrimental. Your main focus should be on farming, getting stacks, and working towards your item spikes where you will become extremely strong. Objectives are also crucial to play around, since they will unlock your true form while also giving your team an advantage. On that note, Rift Herald and Baron are pretty OP for Bel'Veth, as it makes your ult last 3 times as long and gives you crazy pushing power with the spawn Voidlings. In short, she gets better and better the longer the game goes, so there is really no reason to force plays. Bel'Veth is a farming jungler on steroids, turning into a 1v9 machine once you get passive stacks and your item spikes. Bel'Veth's biggest weakness is definitely her early game, which can be abused by strong duelists and playmakers who will influence the map while you're trying to scale up. Although Bel'Veth does turn into a monster later in the game, knowing how to minimize your losses and avoid losing fights will be a huge difference maker in your results. Next is that Bel'Veth can struggle into hard CC and very mobile champs, as she's not the most agile herself. Junglers such as Rammus, Gragas, and Skarner can give her a hard time, as they'll lock you down and make you extremely vulnerable to getting bursted. Bel'Veth much prefers taking on low mobility champions who rely on pure dueling power, since she can easily stat check them in the mid to late game. Last is that Bel'Veth is somewhat team reliant, especially in the early game. This can be a bit frustrating if your team gets destroyed in the first couple levels. This gives me some Karthus or Master Yi vibes, as the early game usually involves you farming for item spikes and hoping your lanes don't mental boom. And finally, let's discuss what makes Bel'Veth such a menace in the jungle. First is how much carry potential she has, making her one of the best junglers to climb with if you master her early game. She becomes insanely hard to deal with once she has items, making the enemies wonder why they didn't ban her in Champ Select. To build on this, Since her late game is so OP, you always have that scaling win condition for your team. Keeping a strong mental and playing to get yourself farmed up is going to be key to have success on the champ. Bel'Veth is the ultimate stat checking champion, easily winning duels with her E DPS and scaling attack speed. That's why she thrives into junglers such as Olaf, Viego, Mordekaiser, and Talon, who all rely on fighting her head on. To build on this, she pairs amazingly with enchanters such as Lulu, Yuumi, and Janna, making her an unkillable raid boss. Another very big benefit is her pushing power when she obtains Rift or Baron, making tower pushes extremely deadly. One early Rift Herald and kill in lane can easily mean 2 towers gone with her spawn minions and very fast attack speed. Bel'Veth is a pretty strange but powerful carry jungler who can be extremely hard to deal with once scaled up. She has a unique power farming playstyle that makes her a great pick to learn if you want to climb and carry your team to victory. If you're looking for a DPS bruiser who infinitely scales based on your farm and takedowns, Bel'Veth is definitely the pick for you. That will do it for my Season 12 in-depth guide on Bel'Veth Jungle. If you want to support my content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to keep up to date with my weekly videos. If you're looking to add more jungle champs to your pool, make sure to check out the rest of my in-depth series to find more guides just like this one. And finally, if you want a chance of winning a free coaching session, make sure to join the Discord in the description so you can participate in our monthly giveaways. With all that being said, thanks again for watching. Until the next video, peace out.